Power doesn't isolate you by accident. It isolates you by design. The higher someone climbs, the lonelier their view becomes. And while most people imagine wealth, influence, and command as a life surrounded by loyal allies, admiring followers, and endless connections, the truth is harsher. The most powerful people often find themselves standing alone, sometimes even building walls around their lives, literal or psychological, because solitude becomes the only real protection they have left. But why? Why would those who hold the keys to nations, empires, or vast fortunes deliberately cut themselves off from the very people they rule over? Why would a leader choose isolation when isolation looks so much like weakness? The answer takes us back to a brutal insight from Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance strategist who studied rulers like predators studying prey. He warned about a temptation that destroyed kings, generals, and princes for centuries: the fortress. Imagine a ruler under constant threat: envy from rivals, betrayal from supposed friends, rebellion from the people. To protect themselves, many rulers throughout history literally built fortresses: high walls, thick gates, towers, soldiers stationed on every corner. From inside, the ruler believed they were safe, untouchable, hidden away from daggers in the night. And yet, fortress after fortress became a prison, cutting its master off from the world, blinding them to shifting tides, leaving them vulnerable the moment enemies surrounded their walls. Machiavelli's lesson was sharp. Power dies when it hides. The safest fortress is not stone walls, but the loyalty and perception of people outside them. And here's where the paradox appears. To survive, you must connect. But to endure, you must also distance yourself. Too much exposure, and you're killed by rivals. Too much isolation, and you're suffocated by ignorance. The rulers who balanced this razor's edge understood something deeper. Fortresses were never just castles. They were also strategies of the mind. Think about it. What does the modern fortress look like? It's not stone walls anymore. It's bodyguards, private jets, exclusive compounds, layers of assistants who filter the world before it reaches the powerful. It's the CEO who never hears no because their inner circle is terrified of delivering bad news. It's the politician who loses touch with the people because every interaction is choreographed. In their fortress, they are safe, but they are also blind. Now pause here. What's more dangerous to a ruler? A direct attack from enemies or slow decay caused by disconnection from reality? Most people expect assassins, but it's the silence that kills. Silence from advisors who no longer speak truth. Silence from citizens whose anger festers unseen. Silence from allies whose loyalty was never tested until it was too late. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He saw princes fall because they trusted fortresses more than trust itself. They thought stone could shield them from betrayal, when in fact, betrayal simply waited until hunger or fear weakened the gates. And yet, he also saw rulers destroyed by the opposite mistake, exposing themselves too freely, trusting too deeply, being swallowed by the very people they thought adored them. So what does that mean for the most powerful people today? It means their solitude is not just a symptom of paranoia. It's a strategy. A dangerous one, yes, but sometimes the only way to survive long enough to wield power at all. The higher you rise, the fewer people you can truly depend on. The more wealth or influence you gather, the harder it becomes to know if someone loves you for who you are or for what you control. Ever notice how stories of betrayal almost always happen at the top? Caesar stabbed by his closest allies. Napoleon overthrown by men he once called friends. CEOs ousted by their own boards. Presidents sabotaged by trusted aides. It's rarely the stranger outside the walls who destroys a leader. It's the one who was invited inside. And this is where the fortress mentality creeps in. The powerful retreat. They start choosing solitude not because they want it, but because they cannot risk otherwise. But here's the Machiavellian twist. That very fortress, physical or psychological, begins to rot them from within. Cut off from truth, they lose touch. Surrounded only by flatterers, they stop seeing reality as it is and start believing their own myths. That's when power becomes fragile. Do you see the paradox? Power isolates you, and isolation makes you weak. But connection exposes you, and exposure makes you vulnerable. The most powerful people must walk this razor's edge every day, choosing when to open their gates and when to close them. One wrong step, and everything collapses. Now ask yourself, why are the most powerful people always alone? Because deep down, they know the cost of miscalculation is death. Not always literal death, but political death. Financial ruin, the total collapse of everything they've built. Their solitude is not just loneliness. It is a shield, a burden, and sometimes their only fortress. But here's the hidden truth most people overlook. Machiavelli never said the fortress itself was useless. He said it was dangerous when it replaced strategy, when it replaced connection. A fortress without influence is a tomb. But a fortress used wisely, as a temporary refuge, as a tool rather than a crutch, can extend survival. Think of it less as walls, more as distance. Distance that allows a ruler to see clearly, to think without being drowned by the noise of the crowd. Modern leaders practice this every day, even if they've never read a page of Machiavelli. They retreat to private homes far from the chaos. They vanish from the public eye at key moments, letting anticipation or mystery amplify their presence. They build fortresses not to hide forever, but to create scarcity, because scarcity breeds value. The less accessible they are, the more powerful their appearance becomes. But there's a danger in overusing this tactic. Too much scarcity, and people forget you. They start to resent you. They imagine weakness behind the walls. History is full of rulers who vanished from public life, only to find their thrones gone when they returned. Presence matters as much as distance. Balance is everything. Think about the times you've seen this in the modern world. A celebrity who withdraws too far and loses relevance. A billionaire CEO who isolates so much they misread public opinion and face backlash. A politician who hides behind closed doors until they no longer understand the people they claim to serve. In every case, the fortress kept them alive a little longer, but it also set the stage for their downfall. Machiavelli's warning wasn't about never building a fortress. It was about never confusing a fortress for power itself. Real power comes from perception, loyalty, and influence. Fortresses can protect those things for a while, but they can never replace them. And this brings us back to the heart of the question, why are the most powerful always alone? Because power demands a fortress, but not the kind you think. Their fortress isn't made of stone. It's made of choices, what they reveal, what they conceal, who they trust, who they exile. The walls are built from silence, secrecy, and distance. Sometimes it keeps them safe. Sometimes it destroys them. But either way, it always isolates. Now here's the twist that keeps this from being just history or theory. You don't need to be a king or a billionaire to feel the pull of the fortress. It shows up in smaller ways, in everyday power struggles. When you stop sharing vulnerable truths because you fear being used. When you pull back from friends after a betrayal. When you create distance in order to protect yourself. That's a fortress too. And like the rulers of old, you face the same paradox. Withdraw too far, and you suffocate in silence. Expose yourself too much, and you risk being betrayed. The dance between connection and solitude isn't just the game of rulers. It's the game of anyone who seeks power, influence, or even just survival in a hostile world. So, the question isn't whether powerful people are always alone. The question is how they use their solitude. Do they wield it as a tool, sharpening their edge while keeping their pulse on reality? Or do they let it swallow them, losing touch until the walls that once protected them become their grave? That's the razor's edge Machiavelli wanted us to see. Not that fortresses are evil, but that fortresses are seductive. They promise safety, but safety is often the beginning of decline. The most powerful people know this, even if they can't escape it, which is why their greatest enemy is never the rival outside the walls. It's the fortress inside their own minds. And here's where the story gets even darker. Because the fortress strategy, while seductive, doesn't just change how the powerful protect themselves, it changes who they become. Isolation is not passive. It reshapes a person's instincts, their judgment, even their humanity. Step inside those walls for too long, and the very things that once gave you power, charisma, connection, the ability to inspire, begin to wither. Think of a ruler sealed away in their castle. At first, they're sharp, aware of every danger, carefully balancing allies and enemies. But over time, the silence corrodes. Without opposition close at hand, their confidence curdles into arrogance. Without honest voices, their decisions drift further from reality. And without the presence of the people, they forget what it even means to be trusted. This is not just history. You see it everywhere. Leaders who lose touch. Stars who collapse under the weight of their own myth. Billionaires convinced of their invincibility until the market humbles them. The fortress whispers safety while quietly hollowing them out. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't just in pointing out the external dangers of the fortress. It was in showing that the walls you build to keep enemies out eventually keep truth out as well. And when truth is gone, so is power. But notice something here. The fortress is not always chosen consciously. Sometimes it builds itself. The more power you hold, the more people step aside. The more influence you wield, the fewer dare to question you. One day you wake up, and without even trying, you're inside a fortress you never meant to construct. The walls are made not of stone, but of fear. Think about how many times you've seen someone rise to the top, only to suddenly seem untouchable, unreachable, inhuman. Was that their choice? Or was it the fortress others built around them? Advisors afraid to contradict them. Followers eager to flatter them. Opponents too scared to challenge them directly. Every brick is laid by someone else's silence, until the person inside can't see out anymore. And when that happens, downfall isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There's a chilling irony here. The fortress is supposed to protect you from betrayal. Yet the more isolated you are, the easier you are to betray. Why? Because betrayal thrives in shadows. Enemies don't need to storm the walls when the ruler inside has no idea what's happening beyond them. History hands us example after example. Kings overthrown because they didn't see famine spreading. Generals defeated because they trusted bad reports. Politicians blindsided by revolutions brewing under their very noses. Every fortress that promised safety ended up creating blindness. So why do the most powerful always end up alone if it's so dangerous? Because there's another side to this equation. Exposure is terrifying. The closer you let people come, the more they see your flaws. The more they know your secrets. And in a world where power is always under threat, every secret is a weapon waiting to be used against you. Imagine being in their position. Would you trust anyone fully? Would you allow yourself to be vulnerable when one wrong word could end your career, your reign, your legacy? Of course not. That's why the fortress survives. It's not just a structure. It's survival instinct. But let's pull back and look at this through a wider lens. The fortress is not only about rulers and leaders. It's a pattern in human behavior whenever stakes are high. In business, it's the founder who stops listening to their team once success hardens them. In relationships, it's the partner who walls themselves off after being hurt. In life, it's any of us retreating into solitude because the world outside feels unsafe. The higher the stakes, the more tempting the fortress becomes. And the more dangerous it becomes too. The question is never, should I build a fortress? The question is, when do I open the gates? Timing is everything. Too much exposure, and you invite destruction. Too much withdrawal, and you guarantee it. Machiavelli understood that power is not about choosing one or the other. It's about mastering the rhythm between the two. Step forward, then retreat. Show strength, then vanish into mystery. Appear vulnerable, then remind the world you are untouchable. The fortress is not a permanent home. It is a weapon, one you must wield without ever letting it wield you. Think about the leaders who mastered this rhythm. Elizabeth of England, who knew when to display herself before her people, dazzling them with her presence, but also when to retreat into calculated seclusion, making herself seem larger than life. Steve Jobs, who vanished from the public eye for stretches of time, only to reappear with a single product that shifted the world, using absence as a stage. Even figures like Elon Musk understand this instinct, alternating between extreme visibility on social platforms and periods of deliberate silence. Each time they emerge, the world pays attention. The fortress becomes less of a prison and more of a tool. But here's the tragedy. Most powerful people forget this balance. They either overexpose themselves, burning out under scrutiny, or they lock themselves away until irrelevance sets in. And the reason is simple. Power distorts perception. The higher you climb, the harder it is to see clearly. What feels like safety often becomes weakness. What feels like connection often becomes danger. Without ruthless self-awareness, the fortress becomes inevitable. Now let's turn this inward. Because what makes Machiavelli's insight timeless is not just its application to rulers, but to us. Every person, in their own way, wrestles with the fortress strategy. We withdraw to protect ourselves. We isolate to regain strength. But then, if we're not careful, the very walls we build for protection become cages. Ask yourself, where have you built fortresses in your own life? And are they keeping you safe? Or are they cutting you off from the very connections that give you strength? The truth is, the fortress is not inherently evil. It's necessary. Even Machiavelli, ruthless as he was, knew rulers needed moments of retreat, moments of distance. The danger lies in mistaking that retreat for the foundation of power itself. Solitude is a tool, not a throne. And when the powerful forget that, their downfall becomes inevitable. The loneliness of power, then, is not simply tragedy. It is design. It is both the price and the armor. The most powerful people are always alone not because they want to be, but because solitude is stitched into the fabric of survival. Their only choice is whether that solitude sharpens them or blinds them. And here lies the real fortress strategy. The one rarely spoken out loud. Control the rhythm of your own isolation. Use it as a weapon, not a refuge. Step back when needed, but never so far that you vanish. Step forward when required, but never so recklessly that you're consumed. Those who master this rhythm endure. Those who don't, they become prisoners of the very walls they built. Because in the end, power does not belong to those who hide. It belongs to those who know when to appear, when to disappear, and when to tear their own fortress down. The fortress is not about walls at all. It's about balance. And balance, as every ruler learns too late, is the hardest power of all to master.